Imagine waking up in a small medieval European town and discovering that your life will never be the same again. Not because you committed a crime, not because you were sentenced, but because you have been given a position that almost no one wants, and one that almost no one can escape. You have just become the town's executioner. In theory, it is a job paid by the local government, an official position, recognized by the authorities, necessary to maintain order and enforce the sentences of the law. But in practice, it means living forever on the border between power and contempt.
There he goes.
The executioner is the hand
Gods
that
have mercy
carries
on the
out
condemned.
justice. He is the
He's
one who
almost
applies
past. Don't
punishments.
draw his eye.
He is the one who cuts off hands, brands criminals, and in the most serious cases, takes lives before a watching crowd. And yet, no one wants to get close to him. Most of the time, no one actually chooses this profession. Many executioners inherited the position from their own fathers. Others were criminals who received a cruel offer, die, or assume the role that everyone despises. Accepting meant living. But it also meant losing almost everything that allowed a person to be accepted in medieval society. From that moment on, your house would stand far from the center of town. Your children could not attend the same schools, and many people would cross the street when they saw you walking toward them. You represented the justice of the kingdom, but you also represented something everyone feared: death. And that created a strange paradox. Without the executioner, the system of law could not function. But with him, there existed a man who carried the shadow of execution for the rest of his life. Being an executioner did not only mean executing people. In fact, executions were only a small part of the job. The daily life of this profession was filled with grim duties. You could be called to apply public punishments such as whippings or mutilations. In an age when justice was brutal and meant to set an example, punishments were carried out in front of the population as a warning. The town square became a stage. Crowds gathered to watch. Some came out of curiosity, others out of fear, and some simply because it was a dark form of entertainment. And at the center of that spectacle stood you. The executioner needed to master very specific techniques, cutting off a hand with precision, delivering controlled blows, and in cases of beheading, ensuring that the strike was clean. One mistake could turn a quick execution into a horrifying scene. For that reason, experienced executioners trained for years. Some practiced on animal carcasses to perfect the strike of the sword or axe. But there was another duty even darker. In certain places, the executioner was also responsible for interrogations and torture. He operated instruments designed to extract confessions. This made his reputation even more terrifying. For many people, the executioner was not just a servant of justice. He was the very embodiment of punishment. Despite the fear surrounding the role, executioners were often paid more than many common workers of the time. Their salary was paid directly by the city authorities. There were also some curious privileges. In certain places, the executioner was allowed to collect the belongings of those who were executed. Clothes, coins, accessories, everything the condemned person carried at the moment of sentencing. This could significantly increase his income. Another advantage involved the marketplace. Many merchants allowed the executioner to take certain goods for free or at a discount. Not because they liked him, but because they feared offending him. And there was something even more unusual. Because executioners frequently dealt with bodies and wounds, some developed knowledge of anatomy and the treatment of injuries. Over time, a few even began to act as a kind of healer. It was a fascinating paradox. The same man who executed people might also be called to treat wounds or help someone who was sick. In a society filled with superstition, this made the executioner an even more mysterious figure. Part executioner, part healer, part cursed figure. Despite the money and certain privileges, the social life of an executioner was marked by deep isolation. Most people avoided any contact with him. In the medieval mindset, dealing daily with death and human blood made someone spiritually impure. Many believed that the executioner carried a kind of curse, as if constant proximity to death had marked his soul. For this reason, he and his family often lived on the outskirts of towns, separated from the rest of society. His children carried that stigma from an early age and were frequently avoided or discriminated against. When the time came for marriage, the situation became even more difficult. Very few families were willing to allow their daughters to marry someone connected to this profession. Even if the executioner had money or stability, the social weight of the job was too strong. As a result, many executioners ended up marrying into other executioner families. Over time, this led to the emergence of true executioner dynasties across Europe. Grandfathers, fathers, sons, and grandsons held the same position for generations. In some regions, certain families maintained the role for centuries. Escaping that destiny was extremely difficult. If you were born the son of an executioner, society had practically already decided your future. The role stopped being just a job. It became a heavy inheritance passed from father to son, marked by isolation, stigma, and a destiny few ever had the chance to choose. In the end, the life of a medieval executioner was a strange balance between authority and exclusion. On one hand, he possessed a kind of power that almost no one else had. He was the only man authorized to take a life in the name of the law. When he climbed the scaffold and raised the axe or sword, the crowd fell silent. Even nobles and officials respected the role he performed in that moment. But as soon as the execution ended, that authority vanished. Outside the public square, his reality was very different. He was avoided, feared, whispered about in the narrow streets of the town. Many believed that touching an executioner could bring bad luck. Others said he carried an energy connected to death, as if the constant proximity to executions had marked his very existence. So the executioner lived between two worlds, at the center of justice when the kingdom needed his steady hand, and completely isolated when the spectacle ended. In a time marked by fear, faith, and brutality, someone had to do the work that no one else had the courage to do, and that someone was the executioner. In the end, the life of a medieval executioner was defined by a paradox that is difficult to imagine today. He was one of the most important figures in the town, and at the same time, one of the loneliest. Without him, laws could not be enforced. Without him, the sentences of the courts would have no consequence. Without him, the authority of the king or the feudal lord would lose its strength. And yet, almost no one wanted to look him in the eyes. In the public square, when the moment of execution arrived, everyone watched his every movement. Crowds gathered, silence filled the air, and for a brief moment the executioner became the center of the entire town. But as soon as the spectacle ended, everything changed. People returned to their homes, doors closed, and the man who had carried out justice walked away alone. For many, he was not just a worker. He was a constant symbol of death, punishment, and fear. And perhaps that is why medieval society preferred to keep him at a distance. The executioner lived between two worlds. In the first, he was the hand of justice. In the second, he was someone almost no one wanted near. His work was necessary, but his presence was uncomfortable. And so, generation after generation, entire families carried this burden. A profession that brought not only money or authority, but also loneliness, stigma, and a destiny that was often decided before someone was even born. Because in medieval Europe, some professions were chosen, but others simply chose you.